Hey you guys, we are back. Today we're going to talk about the spark of the American Revolution. So up until this point, we've had the Boston Massacre, we've had the Boston Tea Party, and we've had the Intolerable Acts. The colonists are getting pretty irritated. They're getting really irked with the British. So today we're going to talk about what happened. What happens after all of this? So go ahead and for your guys' central question, we're going to look at what was the first Continental Congress and what did it do for the colonies. Go ahead and pause here if you need to write that down in your notes. So right before the Intolerable Acts, we had the Proclamation of 1763. And this was a big blow to the colonists because it said that they couldn't expand anywhere outside of the Appalachian Mountains. And go ahead and look right here. This red line that runs all the way across the borders of the 13 colonies is where the Appalachian Mountains are. So this was the line that Great Britain said, you guys cannot go anywhere past this line, which really sucks for this small amount of people living in this small amount of, or this large amount of people living in this small amount of space. Yes, they had access to ports and stuff like that, but they were ready to grow and move on. Now, this was meant to preserve conflict with the native tribes because anywhere past here was all Native American land. As we learn later on in history, that does go out the window. So another recap was when Britain placed the Intolerable Acts on the colonists. The Intolerable Acts were a way to control the colonists after the Boston Tea Party because Great Britain was tired of the disobedience and was tired of the rebelling and the revolting. So what the Intolerable Acts did was they shut down the Boston Harbor. They removed any kind of free election from officials in Massachusetts. They allowed any English officials that were facing any kind of charges or felonies to be moved to England rather than deal with it in the colonies, because if they moved back to England, then they were going to have a lesser sentence and they weren't going to get dealt with appropriately, even if they committed atrocious, horrible crimes. Another thing that happened was it forced the colonists to house British soldiers in wartime. This meant that anytime any of the British soldiers came knocking on a colonist's door, they were allowed to just barge their way in and make themselves at home and even kick them out if they needed to. That really, really ruffled a lot of colonists' feathers because they had no space anymore. They were nothing but pieces of British politics. So, and they were tired of being set an example of. Massachusetts was made an example by Britain because they wanted to show all of the other colonies around them that if you try to disobey us, this is exactly what we're going to do to you. And this is exactly how we are going to punish you with these acts. So in response to the Intolerable Acts, the first Continental Congress was set up. This was a meeting of the American colonies, and it 9 out of the 13 original colonies. 12 responded. 12 of the original 13 colonies actually attended and sent people. The only colony that didn't go was Georgia, because Georgia was dealing with a huge problem with Native Americans and colonists trying to invade each other's areas and trying to invade land. And so Georgia really wanted Britain's support. And so they thought that if we don't join this and we don't be a part of this, then Britain's going to help us with whatever's happening with the Native Americans. Continental Congress, their first action was to endorse the Suffolk Resolve. And the Suffolk Resolve was passed and it encouraged citizens to disobey the Intolerable Acts. This encouraged more revolting, this encouraged more rebelling, but this also encouraged the colonists to find freedom and to find their own voice underneath everything going on, and was a message to Britain to say, we won't be silenced. Yes, you're going to do this, but we're going to pass this and we're not going to follow it. As well in the first Continental Congress was the Continental Association. And the Continental Association was the first act to call for colonies to no longer import British goods or export British goods. Everything that the colonists needed to come within the colonies. There was no more outsourcing or bringing in from Great Britain. All the colonies relied on each other from now on, and that was to avoid all the ridiculous taxation that got us here in the first place. Taxation without representation. Along with the Continental Association, they also wrote a Declaration of Rights and Grievances, and they struggled with what rights they wanted to demand from Britain, but ultimately they settled on participation in government. They said, we want to be able to vote for what we wanted for. And they also decided that they would meet again in spring of 1775 to give Britain time to respond. They said, here's everything. They wrote out a huge list of declaration of rights and grievances. And they said, here, take it, leave it. We have time for you to respond. And you can say yes or no. But if you say no, guess what's going to happen? We're going to challenge it. So the first Continental Congress had tried to show the loyalty to the crown by saying, here are the demands. We know what's happening. We still want to be loyal, but we just want some more freedom. Everybody knew that war was coming. George Washington was purchasing muskets and military apparel, and they were going on, and they were getting ready to gear up for war. So at this point in time, we have now set the stage for the American Revolution, and we are almost there. They are about to start beefing. It's about to get real active. So go ahead and finish taking up your notes, and I will see you guys in the next activity.